My son stole everything and vanished. Then his daughter appeared 25 years later with a key. The doorbell rang at exactly 9:47 on a Thursday morning. I remember looking at the microwave clock because I was thinking about whether I had time to finish the Henderson account before my afternoon shift started. I almost didn't answer. Nobody visits me. The last person who rang my doorbell was someone trying to sell me solar panels, and before that it was a kid fundraising for a soccer team. But the bell rang again, more insistent this time, so I wiped my hands on my jeans and went to check the window. A young woman stood on my doorstep. Early 20s maybe, dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a faded denim jacket and carrying a worn backpack over one shoulder. She didn't look like a saleswoman. She looked nervous. She kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other and glancing back at the parking lot like she was considering leaving. I opened the door partway and kept my hand on the frame. "Can I help you?" She stared at me for a long moment. Her mouth opened, then closed. She tried again. "Are you Rosa Delgado?" Something about the way she said my name made my stomach tighten. Something about her face, too, now that I was looking at her properly. The shape of her eyes. The way she stood. "Maybe who's asking?" I said.
"I'm Sophia."
She swallowed hard. "Sophia Delgado." There was a pause that felt like it lasted an hour. "I'm Daniel's daughter." My hand went numb on the doorframe. The world seemed to tilt slightly sideways. Daniel. I hadn't heard someone speak my son's name out loud in 25 years. Not since the morning I found Antonio on the floor of his office, the safe behind him hanging open and completely empty. Not since every penny we'd saved for 18 years disappeared along with our only child. "You should come inside," I heard myself say. She followed me through my small apartment. I've lived here for 12 years now, ever since I finally saved enough to stop moving every time the rent went up. One bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough for two people, but it's mine and it's clean and the neighbors are quiet. We ended up at the kitchen table without really discussing it. Old habit, I guess. Important conversations happen at kitchen tables. I made coffee because I needed something to do with my hands. They were shaking slightly, and I didn't want her to see. I poured 2 cups and sat down across from her. My morning's work was still spread across the table, client invoices and receipts that I'd been reconciling. I pushed them to the side. She wrapped both hands around her mug like she was trying to get warm, even though it wasn't cold. "He died last month," she said quietly. I didn't ask who. I already knew. The news settled over me like something heavy and gray. I'd grieved my son 25 years ago when he vanished. You can't grieve someone twice. At least, that's what I'd been telling myself. "Cancer," she continued. "Pancreatic. The doctors said 6 months, but he made it 11. 11 months of dying." I wondered if he'd been in pain. If he'd been scared. If he'd thought about calling me even once during those 11 months. My coffee cup was warm against my palms, but I felt cold anyway. "Before he died," Sophia said, still not quite meeting my eyes in the hospital, "he told me things. About you. About what happened. About why he left." My voice came out harder than I meant it to. "What happened is he emptied our safe and disappeared while his father was dying. That's what happened." She flinched but didn't look away. Instead, she reached into her backpack with deliberate slowness, like she was afraid I might bolt. She pulled out a small silver key and set it on the table between us, right next to my calculator and my red pen. It was just a regular storage unit key with the number 247 stamped into the metal. "He made me promise to find you," she said quietly. "To give you this." He said everything's there. Everything he took. Why he really left. All of it. I stared at that key. It sat on my kitchen table looking completely ordinary, like it wasn't about to tear open 25 years of carefully built scar tissue. "There's a storage unit," Sophia continued, "here in San Diego. He said you deserve to know the truth. That you've always deserved it." I picked up the key. It was cold and light in my palm, barely weighed anything at all. Truth. After all this time, what did truth even matter? Truth wouldn't bring back Antonio. Wouldn't give me back the years I spent working 3 jobs and eating instant ramen and doing my laundry in the bathtub because the laundromat cost too much. Wouldn't erase the shame of having everyone in our community know that my son had robbed us and run. But this girl was sitting across from me waiting. This girl with Antonio's exact eyes looking at me from a stranger's face. My granddaughter, apparently. A whole person I'd never known existed.
Where is this storage unit? I asked.
Sophia pulled out her phone and showed me the address. It's about 15 minutes from here, off Marina Boulevard. I nodded slowly. My mind was already gone, already back to that spring morning 25 years ago when everything fell apart. I need you to tell me about yourself first, I said. About him. Before we go anywhere, I need to understand who you are. She settled back in her chair and wrapped her hands together on the table.
Okay, she said.
What do you want to know? Everything. Start from the beginning. I grew up in Tijuana, she said.
Just me and him.
We had a small apartment near Zona Rio. 2 bedrooms, kind of run down, but we made it work. Your mother? I asked. Where was she? She left when I was 3. Moved back to her family somewhere in Sinaloa. I don't really remember her. Just vague impressions, you know? A smell, maybe a voice. But nothing solid. So it was just the 2 of you.
Yeah.
Just us. She looked down at her coffee. He was sad a lot. I could always tell even when he tried to hide it. But he was there, you know? Every single morning, he'd wake me up for school and make breakfast. Every night, he'd help with my homework no matter how tired he was from work. He came to every parent-teacher meeting, every school event. Even when he was exhausted, even when he could barely stand up, he showed up. I tried to picture it. My son raising a daughter alone. Working and cooking and helping with homework. Being a father. Being there. What did he do for work? I asked. Construction mostly. Commercial buildings. He'd come home covered in dust, hands all cut up and calloused. But he never missed a day unless he was really sick. Maybe twice in my whole childhood, he stayed home. The image didn't quite fit with the boy I remembered. Daniel at 22 had been strong but soft somehow. Good with customers at the restaurant, always smiling, but he never seemed like someone who'd do hard labor for decades. People change though. Life changes them. Did he ever talk about us? I asked. About me and Antonio? Sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. She looked up and her eyes were wet. He'd tell me stories about learning to cook from his dad. About the restaurant and how busy it always was. About you keeping all the books and how you could always find a mistake just by looking at the numbers. Something twisted in my chest. He'd remembered those things. After everything, he'd remembered. When I was maybe 10 years old, Sophia continued, he showed me a photograph from his wallet. A woman standing in front of a restaurant, smiling at the camera. He said, "This is your grandmother, Rosa. That's all. Just your name." Then he put the photo away and changed the subject. Did you ask about me? About why you didn't know me?
Yeah, once.
He got this look on his face like I'd hurt him, and he said it was complicated. Said maybe he'd explain when I was older. I learned to stop asking after that. We sat in silence for a moment. I studied her face, looking for pieces of people I'd known. Antonio's eyes, definitely.
Daniel's jawline.
Something in the way she held her mouth that might have been me. I couldn't quite tell. What did he tell you before he died? I asked. In the hospital. Her face tightened. He got diagnosed last year. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor was honest with us from the start. Said 6 months, maybe 8 if we were lucky. He made it almost a year. A year of knowing you're dying. I couldn't imagine it. He kept working almost until the end, Sophia said. Didn't want to stop. Said he had things he needed to finish. The last week he was in the hospital, they had him on so much morphine, he barely knew where he was most of the time. He'd wake up and not recognize me. Ask for his mother. Ask for Antonio. My throat tightened. But one night, around 2 in the morning, he woke up completely lucid. Grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. Her voice got quieter. He said, I need to tell you something before I can't anymore.
And he told me.
About you and Antonio and San Diego. About a storage unit with a key he'd kept hidden for 25 years. He made me memorize the address. Made me promise I'd find you and give you the key. Did he say why he left? Not exactly. Just that something happened. That he had to leave. That he's been carrying it all these years, and he needed you to know the truth before he died. The truth, I said flatly. He had 25 years to tell me the truth. He could have picked up a phone any time. He said he couldn't. Said he was too ashamed. Ashamed. The word sat wrong in my mouth. He should have been ashamed. He emptied our safe and disappeared. His father died thinking his own son had betrayed him. Sophia flinched. He died knowing that too. knowing what it did to Antonio. It's part of what killed him, I think. Cancer killed him, I said. Maybe. But he carried so much guilt. Toward the end, he'd wake up crying, apologizing to people who weren't there. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion. I looked away, out the window at the apartment building across the street. Tried to feel something other than the anger I'd been carrying for 2.5 decades. Couldn't quite manage it. How did you get here? I asked, changing the subject. From Tijuana. Bus to the border. Walked across. Another bus from San Isidro.
She paused.
Took about 5 hours total. Where are you staying? Hostel downtown. It's cheap enough. I studied her worn jacket, the frayed backpack, the exhaustion sitting in her shoulders like weight. She'd spent 5 hours on buses to bring me a key from a father who'd just died. To fulfill a promise to a man who'd probably been out of his mind on morphine. You can stay here tonight, I said before I could overthink it. The couch pulls out. Her eyes widened. You don't have to do that. I know I don't. But you came all this way. I hesitated. And your family, whether I like it or not. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Thank you, she said quietly. I stood up. My legs were stiff from sitting. I carried my mug to the sink and poured the cold coffee down the drain. When I turned back around, Sophia was watching me with those eyes. Antonio's eyes. We should go, I said. To the storage unit. If there's something there I need to see, let's get it over with. She grabbed her backpack and stood. I picked up my purse from the counter and checked that the storage unit key was still in my hand. It was warming slowly against my palm. Let's go see what Daniel left behind, I said. After all this time, I'd finally know why my son destroyed us. Or, at least that's what I told myself. Part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know it all. We drove in silence. My car is an aging Honda that burns oil and makes concerning noises when I turn left too sharply. Sophia didn't comment on it. She just got in the passenger seat and stared out the window as we wound through the streets toward the industrial area near Marina Boulevard. The storage facility appeared on our right like something out of a dream I'd forgotten having. Chain-link fence, rows and rows of orange doors, the kind of place where people keep things they don't have room for. Or things they want to forget about. I pulled into the parking lot and cut the engine. The key was in my pocket now, small and heavy. Ready? Sophia asked.
No, I said.
But let's do it anyway. The office manager barely looked up when we walked in. He pushed a clipboard across the counter with a pen attached by a chain. I signed my name. Sophia signed hers underneath. The manager handed me a small map of the facility with Unit 247 circled in red marker. Back corner, he said, already looking back at his phone. Lock it when you're done. We walked out into the heat. The sun was high and aggressive, bouncing off the metal doors and making everything shimmer. Rows of identical orange doors stretched in front of us like something infinite. Sophia walked beside me quietly, both of us following the path between the units toward the back corner. Unit 247 was tucked away, like it was hiding. I stopped in front of it with the key in my hand. My palm was sweating. The metal was slick. You okay? Sophia asked. I wasn't. But I nodded anyway and fitted the key into the lock. It clicked. I pulled the door up and the metal screamed on its rails, the sound echoing off the concrete. The door rolled up and open, revealing darkness inside. I stepped into the unit. It was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet. Dim light from the corridor behind us was the only illumination. Dust motes floated in the air. The space smelled like cardboard and metal and time. Against the back wall sat a dark green safe. Medium-sized. The exact same kind Antonio had kept in the restaurant office. I stopped moving. Couldn't breathe right. Is that? Sophia started. Same kind, I said. My voice came out strange and distant. Same as the one he emptied. The irony hit me like something physical. He'd stolen from a safe and kept everything in another one. All these years, whatever he'd taken had been sitting in the dark in another safe just like the one he destroyed us with. There was a piece of paper taped to the top of the safe. I stepped closer. Numbers written in Daniel's handwriting. 071578. His birthday, I said out loud. July 15th, 1978. I reached for the dial with shaking hands. Right to 07. Left past 0 to 15. Right to 78. The handle gave. The door swung open with that familiar metallic groan I hadn't heard in decades. Inside were stacks of cash, rubber-banded, organized by denomination. Each stack had a paper band with a year written in black marker. The first few were from right after he left. Then they marched forward through the years. Early 2000s, the 10s, the 20s. The most recent stack was marked just months ago. "Help me," I said to Sophia. My voice was shaking now too. We pulled the stacks out together and set them on the concrete floor. Neither of us spoke. Just the sound of paper rustling and rubber bands snapping as we organized them. 50s in one pile, hundreds in another, 20s stacked neatly beside them. "Count with me," I said. Sophia pulled out her phone and opened the calculator. I counted out loud. She tallied. Stack after stack after stack. $356,000, she said finally. I sat down hard on the concrete floor. The bills surrounded me like evidence of something I didn't understand yet. More than he'd taken. More than the $250,000 that had been in Antonio's safe. He'd added to it. Saved more. Year after year, adding more money. "He paid it back," I said. The words came out broken. Every penny, and then some. I started crying. I hadn't really cried in years. Not like this. Hot tears, angry and confused, and something else I didn't have a name for. Sophia sat down next to me on the concrete. She didn't touch me, just sat there waiting. When I could breathe again, I looked back at the safe. There was more inside. 3 cardboard boxes stacked behind where the money had been. "Help me with these," I said. The boxes were labeled in Daniel's handwriting. All 3 said the same thing. Sophia. We pulled the first one out and opened it together. Photographs.
Hundreds of them.
Sophia as a baby, tiny and red-faced wrapped in a hospital blanket. Sophia as a toddler with a gap-toothed smile holding a stuffed rabbit. School pictures progressing year after year. Kindergarten, 1st grade, 5th grade, high school. I pulled one out at random. Sophia, maybe 7 years old, standing in front of a birthday cake shaped like a princess castle. Daniel was behind her with his hands on her shoulders. Both of them were smiling, but his eyes looked sad even then. I turned it over. His handwriting on the back. Her 7th birthday. "She asked about you today."
I didn't know what to say.
Another photo. Sophia in a pink dress that looked expensive. Daniel in a suit beside her looking proud and sad at the same time. I flipped it over. "Quinceañera," he'd written. "She's 15. She looks like you when you smile." I kept pulling photos out. Sophia's whole life documented. Every birthday, every holiday, every ordinary moment captured and saved. His handwriting on each one marking the date, writing small notes. "First steps today. Lost her first tooth. Honor roll again. You'd be proud." Sophia was crying now too, seeing herself through her father's eyes, seeing how carefully he'd saved every moment, every memory, like he was building proof that he'd been a good father even if he'd been a terrible son. The second box had folders inside, each one labeled with a different year spanning over a decade.
I didn't open them yet.
Didn't have the strength. The third box was covered with a blanket. Something underneath. We lifted the blanket together. A small wooden box, old and worn at the corners. I opened it slowly, carefully. Inside was a watch. Men's watch, silver, the kind you had to win. The face was scratched. The band was worn. It had stopped working, frozen at some random time years ago. I picked it up and turned it over. There was an inscription on the back, worn but readable. To Daniel, graduate 1996. Love, Dad. Antonio had given this to Daniel when he graduated high school. I remembered the day. Antonio had saved for months to buy it. Daniel had cried when he opened the box. Had promised to wear it forever. There was a photograph underneath the watch. The 3 of us standing in front of the restaurant. I was younger, Antonio's arm around my waist. Daniel between us grinning at the camera like he had the whole world figured out. We looked happy. We looked like a family that would last forever. A note was folded at the bottom of the wooden box. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. Daniel's handwriting. The watch stopped working years ago, but I kept wearing it anyway. It was the only thing I had left of him. The photo was in my wallet. I looked at it every day. It's all I had left of you both. I held the watch in my palm. Daniel had worn this. Carried it with him into exile. Kept it even when it broke. His only connection to the father he'd killed and the mother he'd abandoned. At the bottom of the safe, underneath where all the money had been stacked, was one more thing. A sealed envelope, thick with pages. My name written across it in Daniel's careful handwriting. Rosa. Just my name, nothing else. Sophia saw me looking at it. He wrote that the week before he died, she said quietly. Made me promise to give it to you. Said everything you need to know is in there. I picked it up. The paper was slightly yellowed at the edges. The seal was still intact. I could feel pages inside. Many pages. This wasn't just a note. This was the truth he'd promised. The reason he'd left. The explanation for everything surrounding me. The money he'd saved for decades. The photos of a granddaughter I'd never known. The watch he'd worn every day, a gift from his father. Evidence of a life I'd missed completely. I need to read this alone, I said. Sophia nodded. I understand. We packed everything back into the safe except the letter and one of the folders. I just grabbed one at random, needing something to carry besides the letter. Sophia helped me load the money back in, stack by stack. Neither of us spoke. The photographs went back in their box. The watch and the photo stayed in the small wooden box, and I held that in one hand, the letter in the other. We locked the unit. Walked back to the car in silence. The sun was lower now, the heat less aggressive. I drove Sophia to the hostel downtown. She gathered her backpack and hesitated with her hand on the door handle. Will you be okay? She asked.
I don't know, I said.
It was the truth. She nodded. I'll wait to hear from you. Then she was gone, disappearing through the hostel's front door. I sat in my car for a long moment. The letter was on the passenger seat beside me. The wooden box with Daniel's watch was in my lap. Everything felt heavier than it should. I drove home. The evening traffic was light for once. By the time I got back to my apartment, the sun was setting, painting everything orange and pink through my kitchen window. I sat at the table. Made tea even though I didn't want it, just needed something to do with my hands while I stared at that envelope. My name on the front in Daniel's handwriting.
Rosa.
Just my name, nothing else. Finally, I opened it. 6 sheets of paper written front and back. Dated 1 week before he died. His handwriting was shaky in places like his hands hadn't been steady. I could picture him in a hospital bed, dying, trying to get this all down before he couldn't anymore. I started reading. Mom, I don't know how to start this. I've written it in my head 1,000 times over 25 years. Never found the right words. Still haven't. But I'm dying and I'm running out of time to be a coward. You think I stole from you and Dad? You're right.
I did.
But not for the reason you think. Spring of that year, Carlos Ruiz came to me with a job offer. We'd been friends since high school. You remember him, I think. Came to the restaurant sometimes. He said he had side work. Deliveries. Paid cash. $2,000 for one night's work. I wanted a car. Wanted to stop borrowing Dad's truck every time I needed to go somewhere. Wanted to pay for it myself, not ask you guys for help. You'd both worked so hard already. Sacrificed so much. I wanted to do something on my own. Carlos made it sound easy. Just packages from San Diego to Tijuana. Said he'd done it before, no problems. Made it sound simple and safe. I should have asked what was in the packages. Should have questioned why someone pays $2,000 for a simple delivery. But I wanted that car, and I didn't ask. We picked up the package on a Wednesday night. Heavy box, taped shut. Started driving toward the border. Stopped at a gas station off the 805. I went inside for water and snacks. Came back to Carlos freaking out. Car window smashed. Package gone. That's when he told me.
Cocaine.
5 kilos. Worth $250,000. The package we just lost. I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
Kept saying, what did you do? What did you get us into? Carlos was panicking too, saying we had to find it, we had to get it back. They were going to kill us. Less than 2 hours later, they found us. 3 guys pulled up while we were still at the gas station trying to figure out what to do. Carlos knew them. They weren't police. They took us to a house in Chula Vista. Sat us down in a room with no windows. Explained very clearly and calmly that we owed $250,000. We had 48 hours to bring it to Tijuana.
Cash.
If we didn't, they'd kill us both. Then visit our families. They said your name, Mom. Said the address of the restaurant. described what Dad looked like. They knew everything. They said don't go to police. They had people everywhere. They'd know. And everyone we loved would die. I believed them. I was 22 years old and absolutely terrified, and I believed every single word. I knew where Dad kept the money. Knew the combination because he'd taught it to me a year before. Knew exactly how much was there because I'd helped him count it a few times. I told myself I was protecting you. That if I didn't pay them, they'd kill all of us. That I'd pay it back somehow. Work for the rest of my life if I had to. But at least you'd be alive. That night, I went to the restaurant. Let myself in through the back door. Went to the office. Opened the safe. All those envelopes. Years and years of saving. Dad's careful handwriting on each one marking what it was for. I took all of it. I couldn't close the safe afterward. Tried 3 times. My hands were shaking too badly. I left it open. I didn't know what else to do. The next day, Carlos and I drove to Tijuana. Met them at a warehouse. Handed over the cash in a gym bag. They counted it slowly, taking their time. Then they said you two stay in Mexico. You cross back to the States, we'll assume you talk to police. Your families become problems. We were trapped. Stay in Mexico or get everyone killed. That afternoon, I tried to call the restaurant to explain. The line was busy. Tried again. Still busy. Third time a stranger answered. Said the restaurant was closed. Family emergency. I found out 2 days later what happened. Dad had gone to the office that morning. Found the empty safe. Had a massive heart attack. Died in the hospital 3 days later. I killed him, Mom. I emptied that safe, and his heart couldn't take it. He died thinking I betrayed him. Thinking I stole from my own family to run off and do God knows what. How do you come back from that? How do you call and say, sorry I killed Dad, but I had a good reason? I couldn't. I was a coward. I stayed in Tijuana. Got a construction job. Lived cheap. Saved everything. Opened a safe just like the one I'd emptied. Started filling it. Every week, more money. Labeled each stack with a year, so I'd never forget how long I'd been paying back what I'd stolen. I met Sophia's mother. Had Sophia. Her mother left. I raised Sophia alone. Told her about you all the time. Every time I had a chance to save money, I did. Every time I thought about spending it on something nice, something easier, I saw Dad on that floor. The safe behind him. Empty, because of me. The safe filled up. Years passed. Sophia grew. I kept saving. Sometimes I crossed the border and came to San Diego. Watched you from a distance. Made sure you were okay. When I saw you needed help, I helped the only way I could. Anonymously.
So you wouldn't know it was me.
I kept thinking I'd come back someday. Explain. Face you. But every year that passed made it harder. The guilt got heavier. The shame got worse. How do you show up after 5 years? After 10? After 20? Each year made it more impossible. Then I got sick. Cancer.
Doctors said 6 months.
I made it almost a year. The last few months, I knew I was dying for real. I wrote this letter. Tried to get everything down. Then one night in the hospital, I told Sophia. Made her promise to find you. The money in the safe is yours. All of it. It was always yours. I know it doesn't fix anything. Doesn't bring back Dad. Doesn't give you back those years of struggling. But it's all I have. I spent my whole life trying to pay back one terrible night. One stupid decision I made when I was 22 years old and terrified.
I'm sorry, Mom.
Sorry I took the money. Sorry I ran. Sorry I was too afraid to face you. Sorry you had to lose your husband and your son in the same week. Sorry I put you through decades of pain. I love you. I always did. I wish I could have told Dad that I didn't betray him, that I was trying to save you, that every day for 25 years I wished I could go back and make a different choice.
I'm sorry.
Daniel. I finished reading. My hands were shaking. The pages were wet where my tears had fallen. I sat in my dark kitchen with the street light coming through the window, making everything look cold and strange. The tea I'd made had gone untouched. Probably cold by now. Understanding didn't erase the pain, but it changed it into something different, something more complicated. Not the clean anger I'd been carrying for 25 years. Something messier and harder to hold. I remembered the folder I'd grabbed from the storage unit, one of the ones labeled with a year. I'd taken it without really looking, just needed something to carry besides the letter. I opened it now on the kitchen table. The first paper was an eviction notice. My name on it. Address of an apartment I'd lived in years ago. 3 months behind on rent. The amount owed was circled in red. $2,400. The next paper was a wire transfer receipt from Tijuana. Same date as the eviction notice. Exact amount. $2,400 sent to my landlord's name. I remembered that. It was maybe 10 years ago. I'd been working 2 jobs, but one of them cut my hours. I couldn't make rent. The eviction notice came. Then 3 days later my landlord called, confused. Said someone had paid my rent. All of it plus the late fees. Wouldn't tell me who. I'd thought it was some kind of accounting error. Some kind of miracle. I'd been too tired and desperate to question it. It was Daniel. The next set of papers was medical bills from my appendectomy. I remembered that too. Woke up in the hospital. Emergency surgery. No insurance. The bill was over $8,000. I'd cried looking at it, knowing I'd be paying it off for years. Then a nurse came in. Said the bill had been covered. Anonymous donation to the hospital's charity fund. Specifically marked for my account. I'd thought it was the hospital's program. Thank God for charity. Never questioned it. It was Daniel. More papers. A mechanic's receipt for transmission repair. $1,200. My car had died. I couldn't afford to fix it. Was going to sell it for parts. Then the mechanic called. Said someone had already paid. Wouldn't say who. I remembered crying in that parking lot. Thinking I'd finally gotten lucky for once. It was Daniel. There were more. Lists of smaller transfers. Always when I'd been between jobs, or in some kind of crisis. Mysterious envelopes of cash that appeared in my mailbox with no return address. Just enough to cover groceries or utilities or small emergencies. I'd thought some were from church charity. Some from confused billing. Some from luck. All of it was Daniel. He'd been watching me for years. Crossing the border. Tracking my life. Seeing when I struggled. Sending money when he could. Helping from the shadows. Never letting me know. Never asking for credit or forgiveness or anything at all. I spread all the evidence across my kitchen table. Receipts, letters, proof of anonymous help spanning over a decade. Part of me felt strange about it. Unsettled. He'd been following me. Watching my life without my knowing. That should have felt wrong. But part of me felt something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Every time I thought I was surviving alone through my own strength, he'd been there. Silently trying to fix what he'd broken. Trying to take care of me the only way he could without revealing himself. He stole everything. But he paid it back. He disappeared. But he never really left. He couldn't face me. But he never stopped trying to help. Both things were true at the same time. There was no clean way to resolve that. No simple answer. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Did you read it? I looked at the letter on my table. The evidence spread around it. The watch in its small wooden box. All of it sitting in the light from the street lamp outside. I texted back.
Yes.
3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Can we talk tomorrow? Yes, I wrote. I knew what she wanted to ask. Can you forgive him? I didn't know the answer yet. I gathered all the papers carefully. Stacked them next to the letter. Daniel had spent his entire adult life trying to atone for one terrified night when he was 22 years old. I'd spent just as long hating him for abandoning me. Now I knew the truth. I just didn't know what to do with it. The next morning I met Sophia at a small cafe near downtown. She was already there when I arrived with 2 coffees on the table waiting. I slid into the booth across from her. Neither of us knew how to start. You read everything, she asked finally. Everything. The letter. The evidence. All of it. We both sipped our coffee. It was too hot, but I drank it anyway. Needed something to do. Do you believe him? Sophia's voice was careful. I thought about it.
Really thought about it.
I believe it happened the way he said. I believe he was terrified. I believe he thought he was protecting us. But I paused. I'm still angry. He didn't trust us enough to tell the truth. We could have run. Hidden. Gone to the police together. Something. Anything but what he did. Sophia nodded slowly. He said the same thing in the hospital. That his biggest mistake was thinking he had to handle it alone. that he should have trusted you and Antonio to face it together. When exactly did he tell you all this? I asked. I mean the details. Sophia set down her coffee. The last week. He'd been in the hospital for 5 days at that point. They'd given him so much morphine, he barely knew where he was most of the time. He kept having conversations with people who weren't there. Called me Rosa a few times. Called for Antonio. But one night around 2 in the morning, he woke up completely lucid. Grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. I could picture it. The hospital room. The machines beeping. My son dying. Finally telling the truth after 25 years of carrying it alone. He told me everything that night, Sophia continued. About the cartel. About the money. About his father finding the empty safe. He cried while he was talking. Kept saying I killed him. I killed my own father. The machine started going crazy. Nurses rushed in. They pushed me out into the hallway. Sophia's eyes were wet now. I waited there for 2 hours. Didn't know if he was going to make it through the night. The doctor finally came out and said his heart gave out. That his body was too weak from the cancer to survive the stress. Heart attack, I said quietly. Yeah, just like Antonio. Sophia looked at me. I know. He knew too. I think part of him expected it. Like he'd always known he'd die the same way his father did. We sat with that for a moment. The parallel was cruel. Both men, father and son, dying the same way. One from discovering a betrayal. One from confessing it. Sophia finally asked the question I'd known was coming. Can you forgive him? I looked out the window. Watched people walking by, living their normal lives. Normal problems. Normal families. I watched them for a long time before answering. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. What word would be right? Understanding maybe. Acceptance. I looked back at her. I understand why he did it. I understand he was 22 and scared and thought he was protecting us. I accept that he tried to make it right. That he spent his whole life trying to make it right. Is that enough? I saw Antonio's eyes looking back at me from Sophia's face. Daniel's jawline. 3 generations sitting in this booth. Me, my son's daughter, and the ghosts between us. It has to be, I said. He's gone. I can't forgive him to his face. Can't yell at him. Can't hug him. Can't do anything except decide how to move forward. Sophia's shoulders relaxed slightly, like she'd been holding her breath. Can I still visit you? She asked quietly. Even if you can't completely forgive him, can I still be part of your life? You're not him, I said. You're you. I reached across the table and touched her hand briefly. Yes, you can visit. Over the following weeks, we met regularly. Sometimes at my apartment. Sometimes at coffee shops. Once at a park where we walked for an hour without saying much, just being together. We traded stories. Sophia told me about Daniel teaching her to ride a bike, how patient he'd been even when she kept falling. How he'd help with her math homework even though he was exhausted from work. How he'd make breakfast every Sunday, the same recipes he learned working in the restaurant with Antonio. Pancakes with cinnamon, she said. And scrambled eggs with peppers and onions. He said that's how his dad taught him. That's right, I said. Antonio's specialty. Sunday breakfast. I told her about Daniel as a little boy. How he'd loved helping in the restaurant kitchen. Standing on a stool next to Antonio to watch him cook. How his laugh used to fill the whole dining room. How he'd been so gentle with the stray cats that hung around the back door, always sneaking them scraps, even though Antonio pretended not to notice. We were building something, not what was lost. That was gone forever. But something new. A bridge across 25 years of silence. I decided to keep the money. All of it. Moved it from the safe to a bank account. First time in my life I'd seen that many numbers after my name. The bank manager kept asking if I was sure I wanted it all in one account. Kept suggesting investments and financial advisors. I just wanted it somewhere safe where I could see it. First thing I did was quit one of my bookkeeping clients. The difficult one who always questioned my invoices and paid late. Started working less. Had time to breathe. Had time to cook real meals instead of instant ramen. Had time to sit in the morning with actual coffee instead of rushing out the door. I fixed things in my apartment that had been broken for years. The dripping faucet that had been driving me crazy. The cabinet door that wouldn't close right. The cracked tile in the bathroom. Small repairs I'd been putting off because they cost money, and I'd always had to choose between fixing things and eating. Then I bought a new car. Well, new to me. A reliable Honda that didn't make scary noises or burn oil. The salesman kept trying to upsell me on fancy features. I just wanted something that worked. Something I didn't have to worry about breaking down on the freeway. I bought good coffee. The kind that comes in a bag with a Ziploc, not the cheapest kind in a plastic container. Started buying vegetables that weren't bruised or wilted. Stopped checking prices at the grocery store, just bought what I wanted. Then I started looking at houses. Small ones. Nothing fancy. But something that was mine. Something with a yard maybe. A second bedroom. I found one after a few months of looking. 2 bedrooms. Small yard with a lemon tree. Safe neighborhood with actual sidewalks where people walked their dogs. Nothing fancy, but solid.
Real. Mine.
I used the money for a down payment. Moved in on a Saturday with Sophia's help. She drove up from Tijuana to help me pack and unpack. We worked all day, carrying boxes, arranging furniture. Ordered pizza for dinner and ate it sitting on the floor of my new living room because I didn't have a kitchen table yet. "This is really nice," Sophia said, looking around.
It is, I said. It really is.
I planted a garden in the backyard. Tomatoes because I'd always wanted fresh tomatoes. Herbs because Antonio used to grow them behind the restaurant. Flowers because they made me happy. Things that grew. Things that needed care and time and gave something back. I set up an account for Sophia. For school. For whatever she needed. She was in nursing school now, working part-time at a clinic. The money would help. She tried to refuse at first. Said it was too much. I told her it was her father's money, and he'd wanted to have it. That was true enough. One weekend Sophia drove me to Tijuana. We crossed the border together. Something I hadn't done in decades. The last time I'd crossed was before Daniel left, back when we'd go shopping for ingredients we couldn't find in San Diego. Back when Mexico was just the place next door, not the place my son had been exiled to. She drove through streets I didn't recognize to a small cemetery on the edge of the city. Daniel was buried there. Simple headstone. Daniel Delgado. Beloved father. Nothing about being someone's son. I wondered if that had been intentional or just an oversight. Sophia stayed back, giving me space. I stood at the grave alone. I hadn't prepared what to say. Hadn't rehearsed. But the words came anyway. "I read your letter," I said quietly. "I know what happened now. I know why you left. I understand you were scared." A bird sang somewhere nearby. Traffic noise from the street. Normal sounds. Life continuing. But you should have told us. We could have faced it together. You didn't have to carry it alone. The headstone didn't answer. Just sat there in the sun, marking where my son was buried in foreign ground. You carried it alone for 25 years. That was your choice. I spent just as long being angry. That was mine. I paused. Neither of us chose right. I looked at his name carved in stone. Daniel. My son. Gone before I could see him again. Before I could tell him I understood. Before I could tell him anything. I can't say I forgive you. That feels too simple for something this complicated. But I accept what you did. The stealing and the paying back. The running and the watching. All of it. I accept it. I knelt down and brushed some dirt off the stone. You raised a good daughter. She's smart and kind and strong.
You did that right.
Antonio would have liked her. I stopped. He would have been proud of her. Maybe proud of you for that part. I placed the flowers I'd brought. Simple bouquet from a market stall. Bright colors against the gray stone. They'd be dead in a few days, but they were pretty now. That was enough. Sophia drove us back across the border. We didn't talk much. Some things don't need words. Back home, I hung photos on my living room wall. Found one of Daniel when he was maybe 20, before everything fell apart. He was smiling, standing in the restaurant in his apron, holding a tray of food. Young and happy and whole. Next to it, I hung Sophia's graduation photo. Cap and gown. Holding her diploma. Same smile. Family continuing. Different than before, but continuing. Sophia started visiting every few weeks. We'd cook together. I taught her how to make tamales the way Antonio taught me. Showed her how to spread the masa just right, how to fold the corn husks, how to know when they were done. She took notes on her phone, asked questions, learned. We didn't talk about Daniel constantly, but he was there. In the watch I kept on my dresser, the one Antonio gave him. In Sophia's laugh that sounded exactly like his. In the money that let me live instead of just survive. in the garden growing in my backyard, in the second bedroom that was hers whenever she wanted it. One evening months later, Sophia came over to help me make tamales for Christmas. We stood in my kitchen with masa spread on the counter and music playing softly. I watched her work, careful and focused. Saw 3 generations in her face. Antonio's eyes. Daniel's determined expression when he concentrated. Something of myself in the way she held her head. I thought about Daniel at 22 making a desperate choice in a moment of terror. I thought about Antonio dying before he knew the truth. I thought about myself surviving alone for so long, not as alone as I believed. This isn't forgiveness, exactly. I'm not sure what forgiveness would even look like after everything that happened. But it's acceptance. It's understanding. It's taking the broken pieces and building something new with them. He paid back every penny. He watched over me when I didn't know. He raised his daughter to be kind and good. That has to count for something. It doesn't erase what he took. Doesn't bring back the years. But it counts. Sophia looked up from the tamales. Like this? I checked her work. The folds were perfect. The filling was centered just right. You're a natural, I said. She smiled. Antonio's smile passed down through Daniel, landing on her face like it had always belonged there. Outside my kitchen window, the garden I'd planted was starting to bloom. Small green shoots pushing up through the soil. Growing toward the light. Everything growing. Everything continuing. We kept working. Hands moving in the familiar rhythm. Making something together. Building something new from everything that had broken. I don't know if this is healing exactly. Maybe it's just learning to live with the scars. But Sophia is here. The house is paid for. The garden is growing. I have time and space and peace. Daniel is gone. Antonio is gone. 25 years are gone. But Sophia is here. And that's something. That's enough. So that's my story. My son took everything and vanished. 25 years later, his daughter showed up with a key. And everything I thought I knew turned out to be wrong. Not completely wrong, but not completely right either. Life is messier than that. More complicated. I'd love to hear what you think. If you were in my place, could you have accepted the truth after all those years? Could you have let your granddaughter into your life? Let me know in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, please subscribe. I think we all have stories like this. Complicated ones. Painful ones. Stories where there are no clean answers. Maybe sharing them helps. Maybe that's enough.
If you enjoyed this, you'll probably like the next story too.